Hi guys, welcome back. Lovely to see you here. Since this is a new format of videos, let me give you a quick introduction. So please bear with me for a minute or two here. So as you've noticed, I've been trying to find my way back to YouTube, trying various things out, and based on how it was received, I decided to change things up a bit again and try another format, which is kind of a mix of what I used to do. So the plan is to upload a few of these podcasty type videos a week. They'll be, just single person, which is me speaking. And it's going to be based around mental health and the human condition in general. And apart from that, I'll have 1 or 2 short films on mental health each month. So that thing you all like the most. So fingers crossed, hope this time this formula works out. A big thank you to anyone who donated to the channel. You're the people who make this possible. I would not have been here without you. So a big hug goes out from me to you. And if you'd like to be one of those glorious humans and support me, there's a link to my PayPal donation page in the comments. I'm not gonna lie, I am going to need your help for the next few months before I get this channel off the ground, if I really want this thing to survive. I'm sure that after a few months of hard work, the ad revenue on YouTube will just be enough to pay the rent, but sadly, for now it's not. And if I want to do this full time, I need you. I hate to be that person always asking for money, but I just gotta ask for help. But moving on to the main topic. Today we are going to discuss attachment theory, and if you're guilty of calling your partner 46 times just because they did not reply to your text for 20 minutes, you're not alone. If you're guilty of ending a perfectly fine relationship just because you did not want to be the abandoned one, you're not alone. If you worry your partner will leave you for no reason at all, just because you think they might change their mind all of a sudden, you're not alone. So what is attachment theory? I think that next to abandonment issues, this was another phrase that made me understand the nature of my relationships and how they worked. Or did not work, actually. There are countless studies out there proving that the way we behaved with our parents affect the way we interact with our romantic partners. How others should treat us, how we should treat them, what we deserve in love. All of that is determined by what happened to us during childhood. It's important to note, though, that our early years shape us, but do not solidify our adult relationship styles. So it can be changed. Before I dive into all the silly things that attachment makes us do, let's talk about the 4 strategies humans can adopt. Secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful avoidant. If your attachment style is secure, you are one lucky beast. People with that style have no issues with displaying interest and affection. They know their boundaries and can prioritize the relationship well. They don't really mind being single, but they don't push others away either. Secure types don't have much trouble with trusting people who deserve to be trusted. Generally speaking, they are very reasonable when it comes to being in a relationship. According to research, over 50% of the population are of this type. Now, here is where the fun begins. First up, anxious attachment style. Long story short, when parents are inconsistently available, it creates confusion in a child as to whether it can depend on others or not. So some of the needs are met, some are not. People with that style tend to feel more insecure and seek reassurance in their relationships. At the same time, they might have trust issues, not just about being faithful, not just infidelity. Very often they don't believe in their partner's words of affection. They don't believe all of the warmth and love that's being given. Why? Because their parents would say the very same things. It's just that those words were empty, lacking real emotion, and no action ever followed. If the word needy rings a bell, you might have an anxious attachment style. It's what makes us do all that crazy stuff like call someone 100 times, go insane when they don't reply instantly, be worried that our partner will leave us, even when everything seems to be okay. Anxious types will look for constant words and physical acts of reassurance. They want to be certain they are loved and that they will not be abandoned. Sadly, all that clinging and desperate actions actually push their partners away. There's lots of insecurity, possessiveness, jealousy, or needing to be in control for those types. Quite a lot of mind reading and negative misinterpretation of words as well. Constant worry about how the other person feels about them, which in turn leads to overdoing for their partner and being unable to set healthy boundaries. If you add abandonment issues and an alcoholic parent to the equation, it all becomes a very shaky, heavily emotional mess of relationships, but that's for another video. Now, moving on to avoidant attachment style. Parents of this type were most likely unavailable. These people need to feel independent. They don't want to have to rely on anyone, and vice versa. They don't want anyone relying on them. In an adult life relationship, this type seems dismissive. Yes, they want to form relationships, but at the same time resist emotions and closeness and intimacy. They can seem cool and ignore the needs of their partner, often putting themselves first. They simply push the other person away, always keeping them at a distance. And last but not least, my favorite, fearful avoidant. Because why be messed up in one way when you can have it all? All of the messiness. Fearful avoidant types desire close relationships, but they feel uncomfortable relying on others because they fear they might be let down. As for the childhood part, it's usually linked to abuse and neglect, probably an alcoholic parent, maybe an absent parent, maybe a narcissist parent. A person with that attachment style wants safety from their partner, but is also terrified of being close and fully letting go. They won't let themselves fall in love and will try to run away from their feelings in fear of being abandoned. They will end a perfectly fine relationship because it feels better to be the abandoner rather than the abandonee. They usually form quite turbulent relationships that swing like a pendulum. Too good, too bad. End the relationship, go back to the relationship, end it, and so on. Now, as if this whole thing wasn't complicated enough, instead of forming healthy relationships with secure people, we tend to choose people who only reinforce our insecurities, whether we are anxious or avoidant or fearful avoidant. Of course, secure types will be able to date pretty much everyone because they are confident enough about themselves. They are confident enough to give the anxious type all the reassurance they need and give the avoidant type all the space they want without feeling neglected or rejected. Avoidant and anxious types usually choose each other might seem irrational, but there's a good reason for it. The avoidant type will use the anxious type's neediness and insecurity to validate their independence. In other words, they like to be chased, but still have their own space, and the chase just reinforces their arrogance. Anxious types, on the other hand, like to chase. They need validation from others to not feel completely worthless. And the more the avoidant type pushes them away, the more desperately they hang on, they cling on. Secure types, those lucky bastards, usually have enough confidence in themselves to simply move on from an unhealthy relationship. So with an avoidant type, they accept the rejection, and with the anxious type, the constant anxiety sometimes just becomes too much. So they move on to someone who is a little bit more confident. Fearful avoidant types will have trouble creating any kind of relationships. These will be very toxic, on and off. It's a constant push-pull thing. And sadly, obviously, that's not very appealing and simply tiring for a potential partner. So, fearful avoidant types will probably just pick each other. All of this is, of course, just general info. You're never just one type. As far as I know, you can take tests online and find out your percentage scale for every type. But just knowing what type you are won't magically solve your problems. But I always say that it's better to at least know what you're dealing with, because that'll direct you towards a potential correct solution if you choose to act upon it. And also, simply knowing that it's more complicated than just your fault gives great comfort, especially since we generally end up in the same relationships all over again, repeating the toxic patterns. So at some point, all of us will stop and think, okay, it always ends the same way, so clearly there's something wrong with me. I'm incapable of forming a healthy bond, so I think I'm just going to give up entirely. So, you might ask, how do you change your attachment style? And, I've got one magic recipe for everything, and that's therapy. But of course, not everyone can go. And therapy alone is not enough. And what I've seen from therapists online while researching this topic is that enough time spent with a secure type lets you learn how to be more secure yourself. As I've mentioned before, secure types will either give you enough space when you're avoidant and enough reassurance if you're anxious. But it does require work on your part as well. You need to know which type you are, explain it to your partner, and ask them for a little bit of patience. And most importantly, try to stay in control of your behaviors. Don't be too clingy if anxious. Don't push too far away if avoidant. I know it's easier said than done, but I have myself as proof. It's almost like CBT for social anxiety. If none of your catastrophic predictions, like cheating or abandonment, come true, you slowly accept that none of that is headed your way. Yeah, sometimes people cheat or simply split, even secure types, but what you learn from a secure type is that it's not inevitable. All of the catastrophic predictions don't have to happen every time, so there's just no point in worrying in advance. But again, you can't undo your entire childhood in 3 weeks. It takes patience on both sides, you and your partner. It takes months or sometimes years, but all experts agree, as I've said before, it can be done. Your attachment style is not permanent. Just remember that this is a tiny part of all the other factors that affect your adult relationships. You could be an adult child of an alcoholic, or a narcissist, could have other mental disorders. You could have went through multiple toxic relationships in your adult life that either changed your style or reinforced it. But I do think that your attachment style is a key component, since we all have childhoods, right? So there's no way of escaping that. So this is probably a good start, and I hope that today's podcast will be the beginning of your journey to better, healthier relationships and a calmer, wiser you. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you very soon. Thanks for listening. Good night.